I didn't notice the footprints at first because I was too focused on how quiet my apartment suddenly felt, like it was holding its breath. I had just moved into the place a week earlier, a third-floor walk-up in an old brick building that smelled faintly of dust and cleaning solution. Money was tight, so when I saw a Craigslist post offering a free couch as long as I could pick it up myself, I didn't hesitate. The photos showed a faded gray sectional with sagging cushions. Not pretty, but solid, and the seller insisted it was clean and barely used. They didn't give much detail beyond an address and a pickup time, which felt normal enough for Craigslist. The house was on the edge of town, one of those narrow places pressed too close to its neighbors, paint peeling like it had been scratched off by fingernails. No one answered the door when I knocked, but the couch was already sitting on the front porch, half covered by a plastic sheet. I called the number listed, and a woman answered, breathless, telling me she'd left it out for me and didn't want to come outside. She sounded tired, distracted, like she wanted the conversation over quickly. When I asked why it was free, she paused too long before saying it had belonged to a relative who didn't need it anymore. I didn't push, because free furniture rarely comes with satisfying explanations. Getting it up the stairs was harder than I expected, the fabric rough against my palms, dust puffing out every time I shifted my grip. By the time I wrestled it into my living room, my arms were shaking and my shirt was damp with sweat. I dropped it against the far wall and stood there breathing, listening to the low hum of the building settling around me. The couch smelled old, not dirty exactly, but like a closed room that hadn't been opened in years. I told myself it just needed air. That first night, I slept badly. The couch sat across from my bedroom door, barely visible in the darkness, a darker shape within the shadows. Every time the pipes knocked or someone walked in the hallway, my eyes snapped open. At some point, I dreamed someone was standing in my living room, shifting their weight slowly, like they were deciding where to step. I woke with my heart racing and blamed the stress of moving. The next morning, I noticed the footprints. They were faint, like someone had stepped in something damp and then walked across the hardwood floor. Bare footprints, slightly larger than mine, leading from the couch toward the kitchen, then stopping abruptly. I stood there in my socks, staring at them, trying to make sense of it. I told myself I must have tracked in water without realizing, or that the marks had been there before and I was only noticing now. Still, I wiped the floor down until it shone and went to work feeling unsettled. When I came home that evening, the apartment felt wrong again. Not messy, not disturbed, just different, like the air had been shifted around. The cushions were slightly indented, as if someone had sat there, and the smell was stronger now, sharper, with something sour underneath. I stood in the doorway, keys still in my hand, listening. There was nothing, no movement, no sound, just the distant traffic outside. That night, I heard it, a soft sound, barely more than a whisper, like fabric rubbing against fabric. It came from the living room, slow and rhythmic, followed by the faintest creak of wood. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every muscle locked. I told myself it was the couch settling, old furniture adjusting to a new space. When the sound stopped, I didn't move until morning. The footprints came back the next day. This time, they circled the couch, overlapping as if someone had paced around it repeatedly. One print was pressed deeper than the others, toes curled slightly, like the person had been standing there for a long time. I felt cold looking at them, a chill that didn't match the warm air in the apartment. I cleaned them again, harder this time, my hands shaking, and dragged a chair from the kitchen into my bedroom so I could block the door at night. I tried to get rid of the couch after that. I listed it back on Craigslist for free, using the same photos from the original ad, eager for someone else to take it away. Within minutes, I got a message from an account with no profile picture and a name made of random letters. It asked only one question: did it come with the footprints? I didn't reply. I deleted the listing and unplugged my router, the silence afterwards pressing in on me. That night, the sounds were closer. The whispering scrape came from just outside my bedroom door, followed by a soft, wet sound, like bare feet lifting and setting down carefully. I pressed my face into my pillow and counted my breaths, convinced that if I listened too closely, I'd hear something else, something worse. The breaking point came when I found the stain. I had moved a cushion while cleaning, and underneath the fabric was darker, stiff, like it had absorbed something and dried. The smell was strongest there, metallic and rotten at the same time. My stomach turned, and without thinking, I searched the address where I'd picked it up. It didn't take long to find an old local news article buried deep in the results. A man had gone missing from that house years ago. No signs of forced entry, no body, just gone. The article mentioned his favorite spot in the house was the living room couch, where he slept most nights. The final detail was almost a throwaway line. When the house was eventually sold, the furniture was left behind because no one wanted to move it. I called the number from the original ad, my hands numb, but it went straight to voicemail. When I turned around, I saw them again, fresh footprints on the floor, darker than before, leading from the couch to my bedroom door. They stopped inches from the chair I'd wedged there, toes pointed inward, like the person who made them was standing just on the other side, waiting. I didn't sleep in the apartment after that. I packed a bag and left, staying with a friend while I arranged to move out. When I went back one last time in the daylight, the couch was still there, cushions perfectly smooth, the floor spotless. No footprints, no smell, nothing to prove any of it had happened. I told myself I'd imagined it all, that fear filled in the gaps my exhaustion created. But as I locked the door, I noticed something new pressed in the dust on the couch cushion, shallow but unmistakable, the outline of a body lying down, as if someone had just settled in to wait for the apartment to be quiet again.
I moved into the room because I was desperate and broke and running out of time. My previous apartment had flooded during finals week, and I needed somewhere cheap, fast, close to campus. The Craigslist ad looked perfect in that suspicious way I ignored because I didn't have options. One room available in an old house near downtown, utilities included, month to month, no background check, quiet environment preferred. The rent was almost too low, but the landlord replied within minutes and sounded normal on the phone. Older, calm, tired in the way people get when they've explained the same thing 100 times. He told me his name was Mr. Keller and that the house was quiet, mostly students, mostly people who kept to themselves. When I arrived to see the place, it already felt off in ways I couldn't quite explain. The house was narrow and tall, squeezed between two newer buildings like it had been forgotten during renovations. The paint was peeling in thin strips, and the front door opened with a sound like something exhaling. Inside, the air felt colder than outside, even though it was early fall, and there was a faint smell of dust and old water that never fully dries. Mr. Keller showed me the room on the second floor, small but clean enough, and explained the rules. No parties, no overnight guests, quiet hours after 10. When I asked about the other tenants, he paused just long enough for me to notice before saying there were none at the moment. The house was quiet because it was just me. I remember thinking that was strange because I had seen another door down the hall, one that looked worn around the handle like it had been used recently. But I didn't question it, and I signed the lease that same afternoon. The first few nights were uneventful, just the normal noises of an old house settling. Pipes clicking, floorboards creaking in places I learned to recognize. It wasn't until the fourth night that I realized I wasn't actually alone. I was up late studying, my desk lamp the only light in the room, when I heard slow footsteps in the hallway outside my door. They weren't loud, but they were deliberate, heel then toe, moving from the stairs toward the end of the hall. I froze, listening, expecting a knock or a voice, or at least the sound of someone entering another room, but nothing followed. After a while, I convinced myself it was just the house. The next night, I saw him. I had gotten up to use the bathroom, the hall lit only by the faint glow from the stairwell. As I stepped out of my room, I noticed a shape near the far wall, someone tall and thin standing with their back to me, facing the blank wall as if studying it. I cleared my throat, ready to apologize for bumping into a roommate I hadn't been told about, and the figure slowly turned its head just enough for me to see the outline of a face before stepping backward into the darkness near the unused room. The door there didn't open or close, it just swallowed the shadow. I stood there longer than I should have, my skin prickling, my heart beating too fast. Then I used the bathroom and went back to bed without sleeping at all. The next morning, I called Mr. Keller and asked him about the other tenant. He laughed softly, not unkindly, and told me again that the house was rented to only one person, me. I told him what I'd seen, trying to sound rational, explaining the footsteps, the figure, the room at the end of the hall. He went quiet for a moment, then said that room was empty and had been locked for years. When I asked why it looked used, he told me old houses played tricks on people who weren't used to them. I wanted to believe him, but that night the footsteps returned, slower this time, stopping directly outside my door. I lay in bed, holding my breath, listening to the soft scrape of something brushing against the wood, like fingers testing the grain. The handle never turned, but I felt watched in a way that made my chest ache. When the steps finally moved away, they didn't go toward the stairs. They went toward the locked room. Over the next week, I started noticing small things that were harder to explain away. The bathroom mirror fogged as if someone had showered when I hadn't. My food shifted in the fridge. Items moved just enough to be noticeable. Once, I found my bedroom door open when I knew I had locked it, the air inside colder than the rest of the house. And always, late at night, I would glimpse him standing at the end of the hall or reflected briefly in dark windows, never fully clear, never close enough to touch. I confronted Mr. Keller in person after I stopped sleeping altogether. He looked at me with something like pity when I described everything, his hands trembling slightly as he unlocked a drawer and pulled out a stack of old paperwork. He showed me the original lease records dating back years, always a single tenant at a time, always short stays, always ending early. When I asked about the locked room, he told me it belonged to a student who had rented the house years ago and never officially moved out. He had stopped paying rent, stopped answering calls, and eventually stopped being found. The police had searched, found nothing, and advised Mr. Keller to seal the room. I asked him why I was seeing someone, and his voice dropped when he said that sometimes people who stayed long enough started to notice him too. That night, I heard the lock on the unused room click open for the first time. The sound echoed down the hallway, sharp and final, followed by the slow creak of the door swinging inward. I didn't leave my bed. I didn't call out. I listened as the footsteps came closer than ever before, stopping just inches from my face on the other side of the wall. I could feel the cold through the plaster, a pressure like someone leaning in to listen to my breathing. In the morning, I packed everything I owned and left without telling Mr. Keller, without asking for my deposit, without looking down the hallway again. He never called to ask why. The listing was back on Craigslist a week later. The same pictures, the same price, the same line about a quiet environment preferred. Sometimes when I'm awake too late, I still picture that narrow hallway and the door at the end, open now, waiting for someone new to notice that they were never really alone. I decided to sell my old laptop because it had been sitting in my closet for years, wrapped in a towel like something fragile or embarrassing. It was a machine from a different time in my life, back when I traveled a lot for work and trusted public Wi-Fi more than I should have. When I powered it on to wipe the drive, it lagged and whined, the fan making that tired, dusty sound that feels like a sigh. I skimmed through the folders, mostly old documents, invoices, half-finished projects, nothing personal enough to make me hesitate. I didn't look too closely, I just wanted it gone. I posted the ad on Craigslist late at night. Cheap price, cash only, local pickup. By morning, I had a reply. His message was short, polite, almost overly specific. He asked about the model number, the battery cycles, and whether the webcam still worked. That last question felt odd, but I answered anyway. We agreed to meet that evening at a coffee shop near my apartment. The place was quiet when I arrived, the kind of quiet where you hear every cup set down and every chair scrape. He was already there, sitting in the corner with his back to the wall. He looked normal in a way that felt deliberate. Average height, neutral clothes, clean hands. He smiled like we were old acquaintances and said my name before I introduced myself. I assumed he'd seen it on my email address, even though I didn't think I'd used my full name. I set the laptop on the table between us. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he rested his fingers on the lid, tapping lightly as if feeling for something underneath. Then he asked me if I'd cleared everything off it yet. I told him I was planning to, but he could check that it powered on. He nodded and opened it, the screen lighting up his face with a pale glow. He navigated the folders quickly, too quickly for someone seeing the system for the first time. He clicked into a directory I didn't recognize and paused. I laughed awkwardly and told him that was probably some old work junk. Without looking up, he said, "That's where you kept the photos." I felt a small, cold pinch in my chest. I told him there weren't any photos on it, that I'd checked. He scrolled, clicked once, and turned the screen slightly so I could see the thumbnail. It was a picture of a motel room, dim and yellow, taken from the doorway. The bed was unmade, the curtains half closed, the timestamp in the corner reading 3 years ago. I stared at it, trying to place it, trying to remember being there. I couldn't. He started describing others, a blurry shot of a parking lot at night, rain on the pavement, my car visible in the corner, a reflection in a mirror that I realized with a slow wave of nausea was me standing behind the camera. He spoke calmly, like he was reading off a list, mentioning file names, dates, even the subfolder they were stored in. I told him to stop, my voice coming out quieter than I expected. He finally looked at me then, really looked at me, and said something that made the noise of the coffee shop fade into a distant hum. He said I took most of them when I thought I was asleep. He said the laptop used to wake itself up sometimes, that the webcam light would flicker on for a second, and that I'd never noticed because I wasn't supposed to. I shut the laptop hard enough that a couple of people turned to look. I told him the sale was off and started packing it back into my bag. He didn't argue. He just leaned back and said that was fine because he already had what he needed. When I demanded to know what he meant, he slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a photo I recognized immediately because it was my bedroom, taken from the corner near the ceiling. I could see my bed, my desk, the window, and myself lying there asleep. The timestamp was from the previous night. I stared at it, trying to place it, trying to remember being there. I couldn't. I left without the laptop and without the money. I don't remember driving home, only the feeling that something was wrong with the air in my apartment, like it had been disturbed while I was gone. I checked every room, every window, every closet. Nothing was out of place. The laptop was still on my desk where I'd left it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark listening to the refrigerator hum and the pipes click, every small sound stretching my nerves thinner. Around 2 a.m., I heard the familiar whine of the laptop fan. From across the room, the screen glowed faintly, and for a moment I thought I saw the tiny light near the webcam blink on. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just lay there, staring, waiting for something to happen. Eventually, the sound stopped, and the light went out. In the morning, the laptop was shut down, cold to the touch. I listed it for free that afternoon, desperate to get rid of it, but the ad never posted. Craigslist kept giving me an error message. That night, my phone buzzed with a notification from an unknown number. It was a photo, taken seconds earlier, of my apartment door from the outside. Under it was a single message telling me to check the folder again because there were new files now.